Get out of my house, old woman. The words hit me like a slap across the face, sharp, humiliating, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I was standing in the hallway, clutching my overnight bag, my hands trembling, my daughter frozen by the kitchen doorway, too afraid to say anything. And my son-in-law? He was pointing at the door like I was some stray dog he was finally done feeding. I said, "Get out. You've overstayed your welcome. You don't pay rent, you don't do anything around here except meddle and judge. This is my house, and I want you gone." I blinked, trying to process what was happening. Just an hour ago, we were eating dinner like a normal family. Or so I thought. But now, he was shouting, veins popping in his neck, shoving my suitcase toward the door with his foot. "You don't talk to her like that." I finally snapped, my voice breaking with rage. "I raised that girl while you were still learning how to shave. Don't you dare talk to me like I'm trash." He stepped forward, close, too close, towering over me. "Don't push it, Mom. You're not even her real mother. You married her dad when she was 12. You're just the woman who stuck around after he died." My heart cracked right there on the tile floor. Behind him, my daughter's lip quivered. She opened her mouth, and closed it again. She didn't move. She didn't defend me. She didn't stop him. I wasn't expecting a hug. But silence? Silence is betrayal wrapped in cowardice. I cooked for this family. I watched your child when you two were broke. I gave up my savings when you lost your job. And now you're kicking me out because, what? You feel big in your own house? He smirked. "No. I'm kicking you out because I can." That was the moment I realized it wasn't about space. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. About putting me in my place. About showing my daughter who really wore the crown in that house, and who didn't. He opened the door and tossed my keys at me. "Last time I checked," he said smugly, "you've got a car. Drive yourself back to whatever hole you crawled out of. You'll figure it out. People like you always do." For a moment, I stood there, trembling, blinking, burning. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because I saw it so clearly, he thought he'd won. He thought this moment was his victory. That he'd thrown me away like garbage. But trash doesn't knock back. And trash doesn't make phone calls. "Fine," I said, picking up my bag. "You want me gone? I'm gone. But remember this moment. Remember the way you talked to me. Because the next time you open your front door, it won't be me standing there." He laughed. "Yeah? Who's it gonna be? Jesus?" I smiled coldly. "No. The police." I slept in my car that night. Curled up in a hoodie, my back aching from the cold leather seat. I didn't call any friends. I didn't call shelters. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling, running through every memory, every time I'd swallowed my pride, every time I'd let things slide for the sake of peace. And then I pulled out the folder. The one I'd kept hidden in the back of my closet for years. Bank statements. Phone records. Photos. Emails. See, when you live in a house with a man like that long enough, you learn not to trust everything you see on the surface. You keep receipts. You watch. And I had been watching him for a long, long time. He thought I was just some old woman baking cookies and minding her business. But I wasn't. I was watching the bank account I shared with my late husband, the one that had mysteriously lost $27,000 after I let my daughter and her husband move in with me. I was watching the way he'd buy new electronics every month, despite claiming he was broke. I was watching how he'd sneak off on weekends, claiming boys' trips, but never posting a single photo. And I was watching my daughter slowly fade. Smile less. Laugh less. Walk more carefully around him, like any step could land her in trouble. They say love makes you blind. But grief makes you see. I'd buried my husband. I'd lost my home. I had nothing else to lose. So I drove straight to the precinct. And I gave the detective everything. The paper trail. The fake invoices. The photos from the hidden folder I'd found on our shared family laptop. Photos of him, with another woman. And worse, emails, blackmailing that woman for money to keep their affair secret from her husband. It was the tip of the iceberg. I handed it all over. And the detective's expression changed fast. "We've been building a case," he said slowly, flipping through the files. "You just gave us the missing piece." 2 weeks later, it happened. Right in the middle of his backyard barbecue. He was standing there, beer in hand, bragging to his friends about finally getting the house to himself, when the police cruisers rolled up the driveway. I wish I could have seen his face when they cuffed him. But I didn't need to. Because 5 minutes after the arrest, my daughter called me. She was crying. Broken. Alone. But this time, I didn't yell. I just said, "Now do you believe me?" The phone rang 3 times before I picked it up. I knew it was her. My daughter. I knew from the silence on the other end of the line that she wasn't calling to check in or apologize for the way he threw me out. She was calling because the walls were finally crumbling, and she didn't know how to hold the roof up by herself. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking, "they took him." I didn't say anything. Not yet. I let the silence weigh heavy. "He's in handcuffs," she choked. "In front of everyone. They just showed up and God, they said it's federal. Fraud. Identity theft. Money laundering. I didn't even know." Her voice broke off, swallowed by sobs. I closed my eyes. This was the moment I'd imagined, but I'd never thought it would hurt this much. Even after all the humiliation, even after being tossed out like I was nothing, I still hated hearing my child cry. "I tried to warn you," I said gently, but firmly. "I tried for years. You just didn't want to see it." "I thought you hated him." "I did. Because I saw what you refused to. Because I knew what was coming." She sniffled. "I didn't know he was stealing. Lying. Doing all this behind my back. You didn't want to know." Those words stung, but they were true. There had been signs. Countless signs. The way he controlled her passwords. The way she had to ask before spending her own money. The way he convinced her to cut off her old friends. Even me. One by one, he isolated her, until the only voice left in her head was his. That's how men like him operate. They don't shout in the beginning. They whisper. I remember the first time I met him. He walked into our lives with a smile full of charm and a resume polished like glass. Said he was an entrepreneur, but never really said what he did. My daughter was smitten. And when you're a widow with a daughter trying to build her life again, you want to believe in second chances. But there was something off. I watched him closely that night. His smile never quite reached his eyes. His answers were just a bit too smooth. He deflected when I asked about family, and changed the subject when I brought up savings or goals. Still, I bit my tongue. She was in love. And after what she'd been through with her father's passing, I didn't want to be the mother who always doubted her happiness. But I wish I had spoken up louder. Because 6 months later, they were married. And 3 months after that, they were broke. Or so he claimed. He came to me then. Told me he'd lost everything in a bad investment. Said they were about to lose their apartment. Said he didn't want to tell my daughter because it would crush her. Asked if they could move in just for a while. Of course I said yes. What mother wouldn't? But just for a while became 6 years. 6 years of me paying the bills while he played man of the house. 6 years of me buying groceries while he bragged about his crypto portfolio. 6 years of me buying groceries while he bragged about his crypto portfolio. 6 years of me walking on eggshells in my own home, because he didn't like how I folded the towels or seasoned the chicken. The man didn't want a mother-in-law. He wanted a maid he didn't have to pay. The morning after the arrest, I drove back to the neighborhood. Not to gloat. Not to say, "I told you so." I just wanted to see her. I pulled up to the driveway and sat there for a moment. The house was quiet. The barbecue chairs were still set up from the day before, party plates left abandoned on the patio, as if joy had been yanked out mid-laugh. She opened the door before I knocked. And for the first time in years, she looked like her. No makeup. No mask. Just my little girl with tired eyes and a broken heart. "I don't know what to do," she said as I stepped inside. "You start over," I said. "But the bank accounts, they're all frozen." "They said he used my name on some of the documents." "Mom, they think I knew." I turned to her and grabbed her shoulders. "Then you fight. You tell the truth. You stand up and stop letting people speak for you. You tell them you were manipulated. That you were kept in the dark. That you trusted the wrong man because you were too afraid to lose him." She broke again. But this time, she didn't fall alone. I held her. For the first time in years, I held my daughter while she cried. Not the woman who'd pushed me aside. Not the wife who'd chosen a man over her mother. But the child who used to curl up beside me on stormy nights, whispering, "I'm scared." And I whispered back what I always did. "I'm here now." Later that evening, she handed me a letter. "I found this in his desk drawer," she said. "I think it's about you." It was addressed to a lawyer. And as I read it, the blood drained from my face. He was planning to have me declared mentally unfit. Said I was paranoid, unstable, and delusional. He even had fake records printed. Doctor's notes he must have forged. He wanted me committed. He was going to take everything, the house, the pension, my name. I nearly dropped the paper. All this time, I thought he just didn't like me. But the truth was worse. He had been planning my erasure. So yes, I called the police. Yes, I handed over every scrap of evidence I had. And no, I don't feel guilty. Because when you're dealing with evil in a button-up shirt, you don't win by playing nice. You win by surviving. By holding on to what's right. By staying loud, even when they try to silence you. And now? Now he's sitting in a cell. And I'm back in my own house. The locks have been changed. The curtains are new. And my daughter, she sleeps in the guest room now, just until she gets back on her feet. Every night, she thanks me. And every night, I tell her the truth. You didn't lose a husband. You escaped a prison. She's starting to believe it. And so am I. The courthouse smelled like dust and denial. We'd been sitting for hours, me in the back, quiet but alert, and my daughter 2 rows ahead with her new court-appointed attorney. She looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. Hair tied back in a tight bun, fingers trembling around a cheap pen, eyes swollen from too many sleepless nights. But I knew this look. It was the look of a woman who had finally seen the truth, and was now being forced to live in it. And he? He walked into that courtroom like it was a red carpet. Cuffed. But confident. Wearing a wrinkle-free white shirt like some wannabe prophet, nodding at the cameras like they were old friends. There were reporters outside already, snapping pictures, hungry for the headline. Local father arrested in fraud case, wife claims innocence. Wife. My daughter. The pawn he played to gain access to my accounts, my house, and worse, my trust. When the prosecution began listing the charges, my hands curled into fists in my lap. Wire fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. Credit scams. Government loans in my name. He'd forged my signature on documents I'd never even seen. He'd claimed I was his business partner, used my social to get multiple PPP loans, and rerouted the funds through a shell company, one that had my name on the registration. I wanted to scream. Instead, I listened. I watched. And I waited. Because this wasn't just about getting justice for what he did to me, it was about freeing her. When they called her to the stand, my heart raced. She looked back at me just once before walking forward, and I gave her the smallest nod. She sat. Swore to tell the truth. Took a breath. And then, she broke open. I didn't know what he was doing, she said, her voice shaking. He always handled the paperwork. He said he was protecting me from stress. I wasn't even allowed to check the mailbox some days. The defense lawyer tried to twist it. Were you not living under the same roof, Mrs. Hayes? Surely you were aware of your husband's activities? She swallowed. I was aware of what he told me. That's all. If I asked questions, he'd turn it into a fight. If I pushed, he'd take the car keys. Lock the bedroom door. Tell me I was paranoid like my mom. She paused. Looked at me again. And then she said it. She's not paranoid. She was right. About all of it. I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes. But I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Later, in the hallway, a woman I didn't recognize came up to me. Brown coat. Nervous smile. Probably mid-30s. Are you her mother? I nodded, cautious. She hesitated, then leaned in. I just wanted to say thank you. I dated him before your daughter. Years ago. He did the same thing to me. I lost everything. He made it seem like it was my fault. She handed me a piece of paper. I'm willing to testify. If the court will hear me. I stood there stunned. Because that was it. The pattern. The blueprint. He wasn't just a bad man. He was a predator. And my daughter had simply been his next victim. The next day in court, the atmosphere shifted. The woman testified. So did two others. One had been an old colleague who lost her job after trusting him with confidential data. Another had been a friend from college, swindled into a fake investment club and left bankrupt. It was all crumbling. Every lie. Every manipulation. Brick by brick, his little empire was coming down. But still, he smiled. Smug. Arrogant. Like he knew something we didn't. And then, the twist came. Your Honor, his lawyer said, standing up. We'd like to submit evidence of a prior mental health issue concerning the witness, Ms. Mendez, the mother-in-law, whose testimony appears to have influenced the case significantly. I froze. It was happening. The forged papers. The plan to declare me unfit. They were actually using it. The judge read through the file. My daughter looked at me, horrified. I stood up. Your Honor, I need to speak. The judge frowned. You'll have your time, ma'am. I need to speak now. That file is fake. It's all fake. I never saw those doctors. I never received treatment for anything listed in there. Please be seated. I will not be seated while this man rewrites my life to save his own. The courtroom fell into silence. All eyes on me. And I told them. About the letters I found. About the friend who confirmed he'd been asking about state facilities. About the way he gaslit me for years, slowly painting me as senile, aggressive, forgetful. So that when the time came, he could legally take everything I had and silence me with a diagnosis I never earned. I might be older, I said, stepping forward, but I am not stupid. I am not unstable. I am not confused. What I am, is the only one in this room who saw the storm coming, and tried to warn everyone. I turned to my daughter. And what I won't do, is stay quiet any longer. They dropped the mental health claim after that. Didn't even push back. Because they knew it wouldn't stick. They knew I'd brought fire now, and I wasn't afraid to burn down what was left of his lies. By the end of the week, bail was denied. He was remanded into custody. And a full audit was launched into every one of his financial dealings from the past 10 years. It wasn't over. But it was starting. Finally. And this time? He'd face everything he'd hidden behind our names. Back home that night, I sat on the couch. Same spot where I'd once been humiliated. Same cushion he told me to get up from because it was his house now. And I smiled. Because no matter how long it takes, truth always finds its way. The letter was old. Cream paper, yellowed edges. Folded twice and sealed with a shaky hand that only the elderly could replicate. I found it when I went back to my storage unit, the same one he refused to help me move out of. Said it was full of junk. Said I was hoarding memories that didn't matter anymore. But this letter? This letter mattered more than anything I'd ever found. It was from my mother. Dated the year before she passed. And it was labeled simply, "To be opened if anyone ever tries to take your home from you." Funny how she knew. Mothers always do. Inside the envelope, tucked beside a faded photo of me as a child, was a second will. One she'd never shown anyone. Not even me. This one? It wasn't filed in court. It wasn't locked in a bank. It was hidden, on purpose. For protection. Because she saw something in him before I did. In the handwritten addendum, she left the house to me directly, no loopholes, no clauses, no shared ownership. It was notarized by her best friend, who happened to be a retired lawyer. I remember her telling me once, "Don't ever assume that smiles mean safety. Protect what's yours." Back then, I thought she was just being dramatic. Turns out, she was warning me from the grave. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office with the letter in hand. He read it once. Then again. Then set his glasses down slowly. "Well," he said, "this changes everything." Because now? Now it wasn't just a criminal case. It was property theft. We refiled ownership documents that same day. By the following week, the court recognized the will as valid supplemental evidence. Suddenly, the house wasn't in dispute anymore. It was mine. And the moment that became official, I marched right up to that home, the one they kicked me out of, the one he paraded around in like a king, and I changed the locks. Not subtle. Not quiet. Not ashamed. When my daughter pulled into the driveway that night, she saw me sitting on the front porch. Just like old times. She got out of the car slowly, uncertain. I patted the step beside me. She sat. Didn't speak at first. Just looked out across the yard, like she was trying to remember who she used to be before all this. Then she whispered, "He's going to hate this." I turned to her. "No, sweetheart. He's going to hate prison. You? You're going to learn how to love peace again." The next morning, I walked room to room. My house. And I took down every trace of him. His stupid wall-mounted whiskey rack. Gone. That ugly metal sign that said "Man Cave." Ripped off the door. And the TV? The one he said I wasn't allowed to touch. I donated it. Happily. Because what I needed now wasn't noise. It was clarity. Then came the knock. Not the police this time. Not reporters either. It was his sister. Eyes wide. Voice shaking. "I'm so sorry," she said before I could speak. I didn't know what he was doing. I swear. But, he called me. From jail. He said he's going to try and file for appeal. Try to get the house back. Said he still had leverage. I tilted my head. Leverage? She nodded. Something about a file he hid. In your attic. Said you'd regret pushing him if you found it. I should have been afraid. But instead? I smiled. Because men like him always think fear is permanent. They never expect what happens when the people they break, rebuild. I climbed into the attic myself that evening. Found the box easily, same one he used to insist I never go near. Inside. Bank records. Fake IDs. Tax returns from people I didn't even recognize. A burner phone with dozens of encrypted messages. And receipts for purchases made under my name, dating back before my daughter even married him. It was a goldmine of fraud. And he'd kept it in my attic. Like a trophy. I called the detective on our case. She met me in the driveway 30 minutes later. When I handed her the file, she let out a low whistle. "This is enough to bury him," she said. I nodded. Good. Because I'm done being the one who gets buried. My daughter and I spent that night drinking tea at the kitchen table. No wine. No distractions. Just quiet honesty. She cried. Apologized for not seeing it sooner. For believing his version of me over mine. And I told her what I had been waiting years to say. Being wrong isn't the worst thing in the world. Staying wrong is. And you're not staying there anymore. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I want to move back in," she whispered. And for the first time in years, I said, "Welcome home." The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. I knew it was him before I even looked at the screen. Inmates don't get many chances to call, and when they do, it's never to apologize. I answered anyway. Because I wanted to hear it. The panic in his voice. There was a pause. Then that same fake calm he always used when he was cornered. Well, he said slowly. Look who finally got her little revenge fantasy. I didn't say a word. Just waited. Because silence, I've learned, is louder than any scream when it comes from someone you underestimated. He laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. You think you've won, don't you? He said. You think you can take everything from me and just move on? I leaned back in my chair. Let the quiet burn on both ends. Then I said, softly, no, I don't think I've won. I think you finally lost. That's when his tone shifted. Hard. You want the truth? He barked. You were never supposed to stay in that house. You were supposed to die in it. Old. Useless. Alone. I blinked once. There it was. The mask, slipping for the last time. He kept going. I married your daughter because of that house. Because I knew she'd get it through you. I played the long game. And it worked. For a while. And then, he sneered, you had to get clever. Dig through boxes. Call the cops. Suddenly act like you matter. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Not from sadness. From restraint. Because if I'd been in the same room as him, I might have done something unforgivable. You don't scare me anymore, I told him. He scoffed. You should. I've still got names. I've got favors. You think this is the end? You're just buying time. But that's the thing about people like him. They don't realize, when you survive them once, you stop fearing them forever. Then use your favors, I said. Burn your names. Call in every last one. Because the truth is out. And you're the only one who still thinks it isn't. He didn't answer. Not right away. And when he finally did, the edge in his voice was duller. Tired. Cornered. Tell her I still love her, he muttered. I nearly dropped the phone. Not from surprise. From pity. Because even now, after everything, he thought love was a weapon. Not a vow. Not a practice. Not something you build. Just something you say when you're desperate. She doesn't need your love anymore, I told him. She's learning how to love herself. Silence. Then the automated voice, you have 1 minute remaining. I took a breath. And I said the last thing I'll ever say to him. You kicked me out of my home. But now the only door that's locked is the one you sit behind. The line went dead. And with it, so did every ounce of power he ever thought he had. I stood by the window for a long time after that, watching the moon, letting the cold air wrap around me like a final chapter closing. In the days that followed, things changed. Not all at once. Not in some grand explosion. But piece by piece. My daughter started smiling again. She re-enrolled in her degree program, the one he made her quit. She found a part-time job at a bookstore and brought home little pastries every other day just because they made her happy. And me? I started planting again. The backyard had been abandoned for years, overtaken by weeds and trash and leftover scraps from his outdoor projects. But I cleared it all. With my own 2 hands. Because healing sometimes looks like digging through dirt just to feel something grow. One morning, as I watered the first few roses, she came outside with a cup of tea and sat on the porch. We didn't talk much. Just sat. Listened to the birds. And for the first time in years, it felt like home. Not a building. A feeling. Then she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Mom. I don't think he ever knew who you really were." I smiled. Because she was wrong. He did know. That's why he tried so hard to break me. He saw the strength. The fire. The love that couldn't be manipulated. And that's the part of me he hated most. But it's also the part of me that survived him. It was a sunny morning when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. And after everything I'd been through, surprises didn't excite me anymore, they warned me. But something about the way the birds went quiet made me pause at the door. When I opened it, my heart skipped. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't the mailman. It was her. The woman I had only seen once before, in court. His real mother. The one he told everyone was long dead. She looked nervous. Fragile, even. Holding her purse like a shield, eyes darting behind me as if ghosts might leap from the hallway. "I know I'm probably the last person you expected," she said softly. I nodded. "You're right. But not for the reasons you think." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one he once said I'd never be welcome at again. And over 2 cups of tea, she told me everything. About the lies he told her. How he'd stolen from her, too. Manipulated her until she signed over her inheritance, then vanished. "He told me he was marrying into money," she whispered. "Said his wife's family had a big house and old wealth. He laughed about it." I closed my eyes. Every puzzle piece snapped into place. "He didn't just marry my daughter for the house, he bragged about it." "I just came to see if you were okay," she said. "If your daughter was okay. I've lived with the shame of raising him for years." She started crying then. Quiet, trembling tears that weren't meant for show, they were real. And maybe for the first time in this whole mess, I saw it. He wasn't just a monster. He was made. "Do you want to see your grandson?" I asked. She looked up, shocked. "You don't owe me that." "I know," I said. "But you're not him." She nodded, slowly. And for the first time in years, 2 women who were both burned by the same fire, began to heal together. Weeks passed. His trial was short. The evidence overwhelming. He was sentenced to 6 years without parole, fraud, forgery, threats, and obstruction. He didn't look at me once during sentencing. Just sat there, jaw tight, like he still couldn't believe I was the reason he was in chains. And I didn't need him to. Because by then, I had stopped needing anything from him. No apology. No acknowledgement. No recognition of what he did. I had something better. Peace. My daughter now runs her own online bookstore from the house. She keeps it filled with light, both the literal kind and the emotional one. The kind we used to lose every time his car pulled into the driveway. As for me? I sleep through the night now. No creaking floorboards outside my door. No slammed cupboards. No tension sitting heavy in the walls like old paint. I garden. I paint. I smile more than I used to. And the best part? The house finally feels like mine again. Last week, we hosted a small dinner. Just family. Close friends. My grandson helped me set the table, proudly placing forks with his tiny hands. As he sat beside me, he whispered, "Grandma, are you happy now?" I didn't even have to think. "Yes, sweetheart," I smiled. "I finally am." Because the truth is, he kicked me out thinking he was taking my power. But all he did was set me free. He forgot one simple thing. You can steal a house, but you'll never own a home built on love.